full force, targeting the all-important battleground states from Pennsylvania to Michigan to North Carolina, where the fighting is extremely intense right now. And Donald Trump and his folks have an ambitious travel schedule as well. He just wrapped up a rally in New Hampshire where he reminded voters of how he got where he is today. Watch.
I learned so much in New Hampshire because I see this place. It's so beautiful. To me, it's one of the most beautiful places on earth. Nice, beautiful, winding roads. Even the roads, everything's so, the trees and the little lakes and streams. And I sat down because I have so many friends up here because I worked hard during those primaries. Remember, I was supposed to lose the primary. I won in a landslide.
But he's shy, and he would never remind you of that. So let's get to our Fox team coverage today. Ed Henry standing by with the latest on the Wikileaks release. Alicia Cunha in the battleground state of Colorado. But let's start with Jennifer Griffin, who is live in Cleveland covering the Clinton campaign. Jennifer, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Martha. Well, we are here in Ohio. Hillary Clinton will be heading here later today for a Get Out the Vote concert that will be hosted by Jay-Z. The campaign has a new ad here in Ohio targeting Republicans who they believe care about national security. It features the Rear Admiral, who was the director of the Situation Room on 9/11. She's a lifelong Republican, and she explains why she is voting for Clinton and why she thinks Donald Trump is temperamentally unfit to be commander-in-chief. Clinton appears to be making a push to appeal to Republicans and women in these final days. She began speaking a few minutes ago in Pittsburgh, where she was introduced again by Mark Cuban.
He has a long history of insulting people. It did not just start in the campaign. You can go back and find what he said about all kinds of folks. And one of the things I discovered in preparing for the debates, which I was kind of surprised by, is that he took out a full-page ad in 1987 to criticize President Reagan.
She was, of course, referring to Donald Trump there. Yesterday, she was in North Carolina campaigning with Grammy Award-winning musician Pharrell Williams. Concern about flagging poll numbers today, especially among African-American voters, caused them to turn to Pharrell Williams, among others. That is also why the president flew to North Carolina from Florida today. In D.C. last night, Clinton aide Huma Abedin, who has not been on the campaign trail since the FBI bombshell last week, she attended a fundraiser hosted by Anna Wintour. The campaign says that they have not been contacted by the FBI since last Friday's revelations. And Huma Abedin appeared at that fundraiser. Sources tell me that as of yet, the FBI has not found any classified information on that computer belonging to Huma Abedin's estranged husband, despite reports out there, all sorts of reports out there with various tidbits that have been leaked from these investigations. Yeah. Back to you.
Quite a week for her. Jennifer, thank you very much. So brand new emails from Wikileaks revealing candid discussions behind the scenes on the Clinton campaign. Ed Henry in Washington. So Ed, some new intrigue today about Hillary Clinton's IT specialist collecting emails from her advisors. And it sounds like Colin Powell really gave one of them sort of a hard time.
Oh, yeah. Let's go through both of them. Very interesting, adding more intrigue to this whole email scandal. First of all, Bryan Pagliano, you'll remember he took the fifth against self-incrimination. He was the IT specialist you mentioned. He signaled that he didn't want to get any deeper into all of this. Well, there's an email just emerged from liberal activist Neera Tanden, who sort of joked about the whole situation and political predicament last September of 2015 for the Clinton camp, but then issued this serious warning. She said, this Bryan Pagliano situation seems suboptimal, she wrote to John Podesta. Let me know if I can help you. He says, like, represent me? You still a member of the bar? She's finally going to do a slew of interviews, meaning Clinton, which will no doubt be viewed by our friends in the press as too little too late. She writes back, Tanden, not represent you, more like buy you Advil and Tums. I'm no longer a lawyer. Bryan was the one who retrieved all our emails for Maura to read. Maybe that's why he's avoiding testifying. We've checked. It appears Maura is a counsel from the 2008 campaign where Pagliano got his start. So that's interesting that Neera Tanden is suggesting maybe Pagliano had something else going on with the Clintons from years ago, and that's why he's not talking. That's interesting, and so is this email. Colin Powell, you'll remember the Clinton camp recently said, well, he had the same setup as Secretary of State. Well, that's not exactly true. He used a personal email account, but of course did not have a personal server as Secretary of State. This email, March 2015, the scandal first breaks. He writes to Cheryl Mills, "Good talking to you, see link." It was a Breitbart story about the Clinton camp trying to say Powell did the same. "You really don't want to get me into this. I haven't been asked nor said a word about HRC and won't unless you all start it." So a little shot across the bow there from Colin Powell, but I would add, recently, despite his frustration with the Clinton camp dragging him into this, he still endorsed Hillary Clinton and not Donald Trump, Martha.
Yeah, absolutely true. So, Ed, in terms of this whole thing, because I think most of us picture you in your office just basically up to your nose in Wikileaks piles all around.
Yeah.
So weed through the piles for us and tell us, what are the most salient things that you have extracted so far?
I'd say there are 3 or 4 big picture points that have kind of been revealing about Hillary Clinton as a candidate. Some we already knew, some you may have suspected, but now it's confirmed there in black and white in some of these emails. Number one, remember these Wall Street transcripts. Bernie Sanders was saying for a long time he wanted those things. They finally came out here. Hillary Clinton talked about how she wanted open borders. She talked about how you need a public versus a private position. Then you had all these attacks on Catholics, Latinos as well. You had a potential quid pro quo with the King of Morocco, $12 million on the condition that Hillary Clinton go and meet with him. And then remember Cheryl Mills saying, we need to clean this up. What the POTUS knew when. The President of the United States, President Obama, saying, wait a second, I didn't know about this whole email system, and she said we need to clean this up. What's interesting, the last couple of days, the President saying, kind of leave Hillary Clinton alone and kind of getting involved in this whole FBI probe is very interesting.
Very interesting. Ed, thank you so much. So Hillary Clinton trying to make her closing statements, and WikiLeaks and the investigation of Anthony Weiner's computer files, and as Jennifer Griffin mentioned, sort of soldiering on without her longtime aide, Huma Abedin, who did make it to a D.C. fundraiser. First time we've seen Huma out and about since all this started.
FBI, will you be back out on the campaign trail soon?
I guess she didn't want to answer that. No answer. Alex Conant is with us today. Served as former communications director for Marco Rubio and a political consultant for Firehouse Strategies, and Emily Tish Sussman, campaign director at the Center for the American Progress Action Fund. Welcome to both of you. Good to have you here today. You know, you look at what's been going on. It's a very tight race at this point, Emily. And, how much of it do you think is what has changed the dynamic and tightened things up so much when you see that list from Ed?
I don't think it makes a huge difference, honestly. There's been discussion ad nauseum about Clinton and emails, and people don't totally know what it is, but they feel like there's something bad every time you talk about Clinton in emails, even though everything that's come out has actually not been bad. So the problem for Clinton is that it feels like smoke, 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 there must be fire. But there's never any fire. But it becomes so clouded, it's difficult for people to wade through. So I think people have either said, yes, this is a huge deal for me, or I think it's just a lot of noise, and I think that she's the right candidate.
But let's take a look, and then we want to go to Alex, at some of the shift that has happened in the polls. Some are calling it the Comey effect. And she has lost her lead. This really lays out quite clearly. Florida flipped, Arizona flipped, and Nevada flipped. And North Carolina went from being plus 2.4 for Hillary Clinton. Now it is at a tie. So, Alex, the only other thing that's been significant in that time period is the focus as people opened their Obamacare premiums.
That's true.
Two big issues that may have turned this thing.
I think there's no question that the Comey effect is real, that ever since the FBI announced that it is still investigating Hillary Clinton, her numbers have been in free fall. I mean, she went from being up about 7 points nationwide to being up 2 or 3 points nationwide. It is now a very competitive race going into next Tuesday. And I think it's because a lot of Americans realize that if she is elected president, we are going to have a president-elect under investigation by the FBI, and we don't know where it ends. That is bad for the country, irrespective of your politics. Look, I'm not a fan of Hillary Clinton, and I don't mind if she's elected president. I would hope that her domestic agenda would be crippled. But internationally, it's very scary to have a president who is so weak, who's under investigation. I think that's why a lot of Republicans, especially, are coming home in these final days.
I mean, one of the things, Emily, that it does remind people of is what it was like to live in the last Clinton administration, when you had a president who was impeached, disbarred, and you see these sort of scandals that hang around the Clintons, honestly, and people say, well, do we really want to go through that for another 4 years potentially?
Well, I understand that people certainly feel that way and have that concern. But when you look at the contrast between the candidates, Trump actually has trial dates set. And he actually has lawsuits against his company that are open, that are active. And even just this morning on your own network, Giuliani, a surrogate of Trump, said that he basically knew that Comey's letter was coming about a week or two before it did, which does
he said that he had spoken to people who were former FBI officials, and they had, given him that feeling based on what they saw. There's nothing wrong with talking to a former FBI official, and he made it clear that he hadn't spoken to anyone who was actually at the FBI. But, in terms of these things hanging around, I think I'm not making excuses for him, but a lot of companies have lawsuits that they deal with. It's just sort of a fact of life. But when it's a public issue, when it's a taxpayer issue, and the foundation still being under investigation, it does just seem, according to these numbers, that there has been some impact. So she's got to dispel that over the next few days. She's got to move people beyond that, Alex.
Right. If the closing arguments are about the FBI investigation into Hillary Clinton, she's in real trouble going into Tuesday's election. If she's able to change the focus back to Trump and Trump's own personal problems, his personal history, that's good for her. And that's why I think when you watch these two rallies over the last weekend, they're not talking about themselves. They're trying to talk about their opponents. That's smart for both of them.
Overall, she's still ahead in all the numbers. And that's the bottom line as we look at this, but he seems to have the momentum. So it's a fascinating dynamic that you've got heading into the last few days. Emily and Alex, always good to hear from both of you. Thank you very much. Good to see you both. Happy Friday. So the presidential race tightening, as we've been talking about, and one of the places where that's happening is Colorado, where Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are now in a dead heat. In play are the state's 9 electoral votes. Alicia Acuna, live in her home state in Denver today, so she's got the latest for us on what's happening there. Alicia.
Hi, Martha. Yes, we've talked about this. Colorado is often considered the swingiest of the swing states. And up until just a few weeks ago, this appeared to be Hillary Clinton's state to lose. She hadn't spent money on TV here since July. She wasn't visiting. And then came this renewed focus on her emails. So this week, a University of Denver poll shows Trump and Clinton in a dead heat, as you mentioned, when third-party candidates are included. As you can imagine, this state is now getting a lot of love from the campaigns. Today, former President Bill Clinton is speaking in 3 different cities. Chelsea Clinton was here, Bernie Sanders tomorrow. For Trump, his running mate, Governor Pence, former rival Dr. Ben Carson, along with Donald Trump Jr. That's just this week. Trump's been here 8 times since the nomination. Clinton is back on local TV with ads, and she's spending money again. More than 1.5 million people have returned their ballots, according to the Colorado Secretary of State's office. As of this morning, Democrats are outpacing Republicans so far. That doesn't tell us for whom they have voted. And take a look at the unaffiliated count. 430,000 who could break either way. And Martha, this is the first presidential election in this state where every active voter received a ballot in the mail. So they could either mail it back or, like some folks are doing, they could come by and drop it in one of these election boxes. Martha?
It can be very interesting in that state. Alicia, thank you so much.
Yep.
And breaking news on House Speaker Paul Ryan. A lot of buzz about him today, addressing whether or not he will continue as Speaker. Did you hear these reports this morning?
Hey, everybody.
He says, well, stick around. We'll tell you what he said when we come back.
There are 2 kinds of people in politics. There are show horses and there are work horses.
Republican vice presidential nominee Mike Pence teaming up with House Speaker Paul Ryan in Wisconsin this weekend in a show of support for Senator Ron Johnson, who's in a pretty tight race with his Democratic opponent, somebody ran against once before. There's the RCP average on that. Senator Johnson trailing Russ Feingold by 4.7%. That is down from 7 points just a few days ago. And wow, were they wide apart over the summer. Feingold was way ahead, so this thing's narrowed quite a bit. All of this as RNC Chairman Reince Priebus says he is confident that Republicans will hang on to the Senate.
I don't want to put a number on it, but I think certainly 51 or more, and I feel good that the number will be more. As of today, we will hold the Senate, absolutely.
Joining me now on the phone from his campaign bus on the road is Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson. Senator, welcome. Good to speak with you this afternoon. I know it's a busy time.
Well, Martha, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I looked at the graph from last summer to today, and you're still behind in the Real Clear Politics average, as we just showed, but you have managed to tighten that quite a bit, and I know there's another poll that shows you guys neck and neck. Why is that happening?
Well, it is neck and neck, and I think it's because we're out here telling the truth. And Senator Feingold, 34-year career politician, has very little good to show for it. And his entire campaign has been false, been relentlessly negative.
But I mean, specifically, in terms of what issues do you think are driving that narrowing? Is it Obamacare? Is it, an overall look at the presidential race? What do you think specifically?
Well, it's two things. I mean, I've really got a record of accomplishment, but Senator Feingold was one of the deciding votes of Obamacare. He's proud of it. He lied about it, and Wisconsinites recognized he lied about it. He said, if you like your health care plan, you can keep it. Thousands of Wisconsinites lost their health care. He said premiums to be lowered here in Wisconsin. Since the implementation of Obamacare, premiums have doubled and tripled on the individual market. Yeah. And, moms who used to be able to afford their insurance with a part-time job are having to quit them and gain full-time employment with time away from their kids. So Obamacare has been a disaster, and he remains proud of his vote. And, and he's callous in saying things like, it's really not as bad as people are pretending it is. They're not pretending these real people hurt. So, again, I think Wisconsinites are actually taking a look at his record. It's a very poor record, nothing good in terms of accomplishment.
I gotcha. Let's talk big picture for a moment in terms of Wisconsin in the presidential race. And as we said, Mike Pence and Paul Ryan are going to be speaking together over the weekend, which will be a very powerful image for Republicans in that state, no doubt. Paul Ryan was asked just a little while ago if it's true, these reports this morning, that he would resign or step down as Speaker in the coming weeks. He said that is not true. Any thoughts on that?
Well, he's sitting right next to me, and it's not true. Paul's a patriot. He's a person of real integrity, political courage, ideas, and he's doing this the same reason I'm doing. We're concerned about the direction of this country, and he's got real solutions, the Better Way agenda. That's what he's out promoting. And that's really what we want to do in the next Congress, working together. So
he's sitting right next to you. He's committing to not going anywhere. He wants to remain Speaker for the foreseeable future?
Well, again, I'm not going to speak for him, but no, he's not giving up the speakership. And I'm sure his conference will reelect him as well, because they recognize he's a person of integrity and political courage, and that's what we need at this moment in time.
So let me ask you about, he also was asked about Donald Trump, and, a lot of people have been avoiding using his name on the campaign trail. Your thoughts in Wisconsin at this point in terms of the larger presidential race? Do you think people should have been behind him more solidly throughout this process? There's been a lot of, friction between Paul Ryan and Donald Trump at points in this race.
Well, I know Paul's already voted for Donald Trump, and as you travel around Wisconsin, which I've done relentlessly, there's a great deal of enthusiasm. I see very few Hillary Clinton for president. We do see Hillary for prison yard signs, all kinds of Donald Trump, Mike Pence yard signs. The crowds are fantastic. They're incredibly enthusiastic about our entire ticket, up and down, both state candidates as well as our federal candidates. So this is feeling an awful lot like 2010, which was a wavy election. So I think the enthusiasm is on our side, and of course the corruption is being revealed by Hillary Clinton's email scandal. And by the way, Senator Feingold has his own email scandal. So we got the enthusiasm and the momentum on our side.
Sorry, I'm up against a hard break. Senator, thank you for calling us from the bus. And fascinating take on what's going on in Wisconsin, which is a very tight race to watch. Ryan Priebus obviously has his eye on Wisconsin. He's from there and working hard there as well. So some states seeing record numbers of early voters in this race, while the government is stepping in to make sure that those votes are secure. Noticed officials from nearly every state are asking the Department of Homeland Security at this point to make sure that the vote is secure. Secretary Jay Johnson addressed that matter just moments ago as DHS hosts a tour of the National Cybersecurity and Communications Integration Center. Last summer, we learned that 2 voting systems in Illinois and Arizona had, in fact, been breached. Remember that? Doug McElway is live in Washington with the latest on this. So how serious a threat is this cybersecurity issue to what happens on Tuesday, Doug?
Well, Martha, in terms of a threat to distort or to actually manipulate or change the vote count nationally, probably not much. And the reason for that is the voting system in the United States is deeply decentralized. Elections are done state by state, as we all know, and within each state, district by district, and polling place by polling place. Even electronic voting machines are not connected to the internet in the vast majority of cases. As a senior White House official told Fox News today, the U.S. intelligence community and the Department of Homeland Security assessed that it would be extremely difficult for someone, including a nation-state actor, to alter actual ballot counts or election results by cyber attack or intrusion. That said, there is little doubt among national security experts that Russia, under President Putin, has been trying to disrupt our political process. 48 states have asked for security help from the Department of Homeland Security.
The U.S. intelligence community is confident that the Russian government directed the recent compromises of emails from U.S. persons and institutions, including from U.S. political organizations. Next. These thefts and disclosures are intended to interfere with the U.S. election process. Can't get any plainer than that.
The Wikileaks release of DNC emails last summer, which resulted in the embarrassing ouster of DNC chairwoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz during the party's convention, and perhaps the present deluge of John Podesta emails that are damaging the Clinton campaign. But others remain skeptical of Russian involvement in those hacks. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, in an interview with an Australian filmmaker, which is slated to air tomorrow, says that Russia is not behind the Podesta leaks. It's all leading to a lot of confusion about this, Martha.
That's for sure. All right, we'll keep an eye on it. Doug, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
So as this presidential race gets tighter and tighter by the day, Hillary Clinton appears to be losing ground in a few states that she did have in her corner. She's lost about 60 electoral votes on most of the maps that we have been watching over the past week or so. We're going to talk about what's going on there. Plus, new voting rules in one major battleground state, bringing out some worries about ballots that may not get counted. So we're keeping tabs on all of this across the nation. We'll be right back.
Maybe Mr. Trump said something that made you feel uncomfortable, but this election is way bigger than about your feelings. What this is about what's going to happen to the Supreme Court, what's going to happen to the economy, what's going to happen to jobs.
Today, outside a base in Jordan. One died at the scene, 2 others died from injuries at the hospital. Military officials say that shots rang out as a car carrying the Americans tried to enter the air base, which is just south of Amman. In addition, the American service members killed. Jordan says that one of their own officers was also wounded in this. Jordan, of course, is a key ally to the United States and the coalition that is being led there against the terror group ISIS. So lots more to understand about what has unfolded in that sad news and loss of U.S. service members today in Jordan. And back here at home and back to the election, new voting reforms in Ohio prompting concerns about disqualified ballots on Election Day. Small mistakes, like using cursive to write your name, could lead officials to throw out your vote. Some Ohio Democrats arguing that the law isn't applied equally across the state. Peter Ducey's been digging into this in Columbus, Ohio today. Is this something that benefits one party over the other, do we think, Peter?
Martha, Democrats think that it's hurting Democrats because Reuters did a review that shows counties with big cities in them seem to be quicker when they're deciding whether or not they want to toss a ballot or not. They seem quicker just to toss them out than some less populated parts of the state. This review also found that it happened about 3,000 times in 2014. So we went to the Franklin County Board of Elections this morning to figure out exactly how this process works. And they said that if there's a minor error, like most of your birthday is filled in right, but the year doesn't match up to their records, or if the last 4 digits of your social security number are missing, they'll try to track you down and tell you to fix it. But if you don't fix it, then the ballot's not going to count.
All that we can do is follow the Ohio Revised Code, what it lays out, and the directives that are given to us by the Ohio Secretary of State. We're not allowed to make arbitrary decisions.
So, again, 3,000 ballots tossed out in 2014, but that was an off-year election. They do expect now, experts are predicting that with more people voting in the presidential year, there will be more ballots that get tossed out. Martha?
So, any effect really on voter turnout, Peter?
It's interesting. Early in-person voting is up, but early requests for mail ballots are down. We sat down this afternoon in the lunch hour with the Secretary of State from Ohio, John Husted, who told us he thinks that that's more a problem of enthusiasm, and he also said that it looks like that would benefit Trump.
In all counties, the early vote is down, but it's down further in counties that Barack Obama won versus counties that Mitt Romney won. So if you're going to extrapolate from that, which is a dangerous thing to do, you could say that even though enthusiasm overall is down, it's down more in counties that Barack Obama won versus counties that Mitt Romney won.
And the Secretary of State also explained that he thinks some of this diminished enthusiasm is because neither campaign have done a ton of get-out-the-vote events here in Ohio, which used to be the crown jewel of all the swing states.
Yeah,
Martha?
surprising. Peter Doocy, thank you. So Hillary Clinton battling in the battleground states, I should say, today, including Michigan. Bill Clinton, seen here, making a surprise visit on Wednesday night. He showed up at a faith community leaders meeting in Detroit. Hillary Clinton also spending time in Detroit. Obviously an effort to boost Hillary Clinton's appeal with African-American voters. She's also out with Jay-Z today on the campaign trail. Donald Trump making up some ground on Clinton in Michigan. He has closed the gap, which was 11 points at the end of October, and it is now less than 6 in the Real Clear Politics poll average. Michigan clearly something that everybody's watching very closely. Joined now by Richard Fowler, radio talk show host and Fox News contributor, and Jano Caldwell, Republican strategist with Caldwell Strategic Consulting. Gentlemen, welcome. Good to have both of you here. Michigan getting very interesting, and clearly the Clintons are not taking it for granted, Richard. She is there in Detroit, and we saw him at that event the other night, so they're taking this very seriously.
No, they absolutely are. And Michigan's going to be close. I just left Michigan, Detroit 2 days ago, so I could tell you it's going to be a very, very close election, which is what we expected this to be. Now, do I think Michigan flips for Donald Trump? I don't think so. I think Hillary Clinton's going to, squeak out a victory there. And here's the reason why, Martha. I think, yes, the email cloud is surrounding the Clinton campaign and sort of taking them off their game day message. But what we saw from today's jobs report is that we saw an increase in incomes across the board. Now, is this increase good enough? Absolutely not. But it's a step in the right direction. And Hillary Clinton, as we go into these final days, the Democratic turnout machine is going to turn itself on, and it's going to take Hillary Clinton to the finish line. But it's going to be close. There's no question.
No doubt that get out the vote machine will be working in high gear. But in terms of the economy, I think it's pretty tough, Giano, to argue to people in places like Detroit and in some of the more rural areas in Michigan that the last 8 years have been good to them.
Yeah, I agree with that. And when you look at those job numbers, you see that 94 million people aren't participating in this economy. That's what the report shows. So it's kind of hard for Hillary Clinton to build a case to say that she's going to do better for Americans if she's going to be the third term of President Obama. In addition to that fact, when it comes to African Americans and trying to have them coalesce around her, has become a very tough task, because as I write Red Alert Politics this week, black lives don't matter to Hillary Clinton, black votes matter to Hillary Clinton. When it comes to black voters, and especially college age voters, they're having a very, very difficult time with the Wikileaks that have come out, and they're beginning to see her as the new Cruella de Vil of politics, someone who will say whatever it takes to get your support, and when it's all said and done, you get nothing in what you were committed to.
Let's take a look at North Carolina here. The Quinnipiac University poll out Wednesday showing Clinton ahead in North Carolina, 48 to 46. And Richard, we remember Donald Trump when he visited Michigan, and I believe it was there that he spoke to people and said, look, why not give me a try? What you have been trying for the past 25, 30 years, and the people that you have elected, especially in places like Detroit, has not worked well for you, so why not give me a try?
There's a couple responses to that, Martha. Number one, I don't think that Donald Trump is having an authentic conversation with the black community. He's never been in any of these urban areas, so he went to visit Wayne County but did not go to Detroit. He went to Broward County but has not been into Sistrunk. He went into Miami-Dade and didn't go to Opelika or Kendall. He's not having an authentic conversation with the African-American voter. Now, I will say this. I'll give Donald Trump credit. I think his message over the past couple of days has been phenomenal, in which you should have heard from him months ago. But he's not having an authentic conversation on how you really fix the issues happening in African-American communities. And he has a track record that is atrocious when it comes to African-Americans. His company was sued for housing discrimination in the late 70s and early 80s. And we cannot forget what he did to the Central Park Five, those 5 gentlemen who he was part of a mob that basically falsely accused him of murdering a woman in Central Park, which turned out not to be true. Donald Trump cannot be trusted, and African-Americans know it.
The markers, and as you see them in those cases, which which were quite a long time ago. I don't know how relevant those specific cases are to, average people who live in this country today and who are experiencing economic distress. Now, you've made your point, Giano. What is more relevant to the African American voter today?
Well, I was wondering, and I was going to ask Richard if he thinks that Hillary Clinton and the Clintons can be trusted when it comes to the black community, because their record is truly atrocious. We're talking about millions of folks or hundreds of thousands of people going to jail because of the policies enacted by Hillary Clinton. I think that's problematic on many levels. And whatever you compare, go ahead.
Just a correction. Number one, Hillary Clinton did not implement. He's talking about the 1994 crime bill.
But her influence as first lady
wait a minute. Wait a minute. The President Bill Clinton signed that bill, and he is not on the ballot. He's not on the ballot. And I think people at home understand that he's not on the ballot. Hillary Clinton is on the ballot. Now, let me make one more point. Giano.
Quickly.
Democrats, and don't get me wrong, I think 1994 crime bill was awful. But what Democrats understood, even Cory Booker has said, let's get criminal justice reform done. Donald Trump has not even mentioned criminal justice reform, and the Republican Congress, the Republican senators refused to give it a hearing or a vote. So if we're going to have a conversation,
that's not true.
Actually, Richard, that's absolutely
not true.
Let's talk about the facts.
True.
Obviously, there's a lot of concern about the African American vote because we saw a tremendous turnout in 2008 and 2012 for President Obama. He is not on the ticket, as we all well know. So whether or not those areas and those individuals will turn out to vote for Democrats, or whether Donald Trump can get a bigger piece of that vote than Republicans have gotten in the past is going to be one of the fascinating stories that is in this election. Because I think a lot of people are not necessarily voting along the lines that they voted along before, but, we'll see come Tuesday.
Absolutely.
Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good to have both of you here today. So when talking to a crowd of Medal of Honor recipients, Donald Trump says he is not as brave as them. He says he's something called financially brave. What do veterans think about that? We'll talk about it when we come back.
We'll speak with Fox News Sunday anchor Chris Wallace about the campaign's final strategies to win some of the biggest battlegrounds of this election. That's when the news begins anew. Top of the hour. We'll see you then.
So the numbers indicate that military veterans are lining up behind Donald Trump. Many admire his blunt talk about jumping into wars without a real plan and remain among his most loyal supporters. He made comment about with regard to that today. Watch this.
We're joined by a number of those admirals and generals and 7 Medal of Honor recipients right behind me. Oh, they're so much more brave than me. I wouldn't have done what they did. I'm brave in other ways. I'm brave. I'm financially brave. Big deal, right? He's a real brave.
Retired Marine Staff Sergeant Joey Jones, warrior liaison for bootcampaign.com and a former bomb technician. And Pete Hegseth is a veteran and Fox News contributor. First of all, gentlemen, thank you very much for your service. It's wonderful to have both of you with us today. Joey, let me go to you first. Did you find that comment offensive?
No, not at all. And at this point in the race, it's going to be tough to offend me. I mean, I was outraged at the comments, over Senator McCain. I've been outraged at things like we go up, we come down. It's not that big a deal. But honestly, it's misinformation. I don't think it's intentional. And at this point, you have to make a choice. I mean, you can choose to take the high road for a third-party candidate that won't get anywhere, or you can choose between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And if I have to make that choice, I'm going to choose Donald Trump, and I'm not going to waste my time getting offended by the little things.
Let's take a look at some of the numbers. Donald Trump leads Hillary Clinton by 19 points among veterans who are registered to vote. He trails her among voters across the board 2-3 points, depending on which numbers that you're looking at right here. And back in mid-October, 43% of veterans expressed a favorable view of him in a Gallup tracking poll, while 30% saw Mrs. Clinton positively. Pete, let me bring you in here. When I just listened to that soundbite, I read it before and then just saw it a moment ago. I thought in a weird way, I thought he was kind of being self-deprecating. How did you read it?
That's exactly how I read it. He said, these guys are all brave. They've done things I never had. I was financially brave. What does that mean? That's not real. I mean, the media is going to try to turn up whatever it can to make him look bad. Veterans know what he's saying. They know that he appreciates them, that he's fighting to fix the VA that underserves them, that he will unleash them and get rid of the political correctness that's poisoned our services, that he will untie the hands of our warfighters and rules of engagement. Veterans like Trump because Trump wants to win. Trump believes in America. He believes in crushing our enemies. He doesn't tiptoe politically. He's blunt about believing in America. That's something that in our core veterans resonate with, even if everything he says isn't perfect in every moment.
We know that veterans are not a huge slice of our society because there are a few number of people who are brave enough to do what you guys do. So in terms of affecting the vote, Joey, do you think veterans will turn out in large numbers?
I believe they will, and I don't buy that they're not a large slice, because some of these states like Florida or Virginia that have a high veteran concentration, but not only that, you've got 3 or 4 people in their household. You're looking at 60, 70 million people that are affected by the veterans issues. Quite honestly, in the commander-in-chief role, I don't trust him. I mean, he's a guy that wants to have it both ways. You know, Iraq was a big mistake, beat up on Bush and all that, and then, you know, go after them and tell the veterans the things they want to hear. But there's one issue or set of issues that I believe is just as important, and that's the VA. And I want someone who put Jeff Miller, not Bob Filner, in charge of the VA. And look up Bob Filner, who was the chairman of the House Veterans Affairs Committee during Pelosi's time, and you'll see what just a horrible person he is, much less how he is for veterans issues. Jeff Miller as chairman has been great, and so that's a tough fight, and he brought Jeff Miller up, one of the first advisors he announced. That is enough for me. There isn't a candidate in this race that represents me, but if I can see Jeff Miller take charge of the VA and do some things there that we need desperately, that's enough to sway my vote.
Fascinating. All right, we got to leave it there, but thank you very much to both of you. Obviously impassioned, and veterans have so much at stake, and we will see how they turn out and what numbers they turn out in to vote on Tuesday. Thank you, gentlemen, for your service once again.
Thank you.
So it is possible to tell how one state may go, perhaps on Election Day, based on early voting results. Is it? Some say yes. We have a live report from a very key battleground state that may shed some light. We'll be right back.
At PXG,
their key battleground state with 6 electoral votes up for grabs. Latest Real Clear Politics average has Donald Trump with a very slight lead over Hillary Clinton in that state. Voters turning out so enthusiastically, we may have a window into how that state will go. Chief Correspondent Jonathan Hunt, live from Las Vegas, where we were a couple of weeks ago. Early voting ends today, so how's it looking there, Jonathan?
Well, Martha, state officials don't break down the number of voters voting for any particular candidate in this early voting stage, but they do give us a clue by giving us the numbers of party registration. And right now, those numbers are more encouraging for Hillary Clinton than Donald Trump. That's because, according to officials, some 37,700 more registered Democrats have so far voted in Nevada than registered Republicans. And according to the analysts, that figure alone is significant and means that Donald Trump will need a huge turnout on Tuesday of Republicans to bridge that gap. Both candidates, of course, know that Nevada's 6 electoral college votes could be crucial. They've both spent considerable time campaigning here. Trump, by the way, will be back tomorrow, and both have sent their surrogates. Donald Trump Jr. and Newt Gingrich were here on behalf of Donald Trump yesterday, and Hillary Clinton sent her husband to rally young voters. Listen here.
I want you to claim your future. I want you to finish this election strong. I want you to go see every friend you've got, and don't let anybody sit on the sidelines.
And the Real Clear Politics average of polls, Martha, currently gives Donald Trump a 2-point lead here. It is razor thin. Martha?
Wow. What a race. And you've got the Joe Cortez Masto race as well for the Senate, which will definitely play into the balance of power issue.
Yeah, Joe Heck has had a small but consistent lead here. Senator Harry Reid, who's retiring, of course, put out an emailer yesterday saying, "We're in trouble." We broke that news to Catherine Cortez Masto. Listen here to her response.
I haven't seen that, but I can